Welcome to another Speedmaster 101 video, and in this episode I'm going to discuss a watch I recently bought from a collector who called me up and sent me a couple of photos of his 76 Speedmaster. Now, I don't fall over myself to buy these later Speedmasters, but I couldn't resist this one. And the reason I couldn't resist it is this. This is a .over-90 bezel that was incorrectly fitted to this Speedmaster, and this is a very valuable thing. So I lifted it off, obviously not like that, and I replaced it with one of my stock next to 90 bezels with a tall tachometer. It's not uncommon to find Speedmasters, if you buy a lot, it's happened more than once to me, where valuable incorrect parts are fitted to later models. I once in fact bought a base 1000 bezel fitted to a 69. So keep your eyes peeled, and let's move on to assessing this actual watch. It's a 70s watch, a mid 70s watch, and these watches have a unique feature in that the dials are domed with no step and have a short S. The S does not run all the way down the long stroke of the P. And for comparison, I will send in a 78 dial. The difference is very subtle, and to be honest, I didn't really care much about it for an awfully long time, because when I first started buying 70 Speedmasters, they were under $1,000. So you didn't really quibble. And so this S here is much longer, goes all the way down to the bottom of the P. So let's assess this watch just like I assess every other watch. And now with the 70s Speedmasters, you can afford to be a lot more choosy, so we'll just slowly go around here. And we've got the stamped medallion with the engraved back. So we go through the basics. First of all, always I start with the dial. Domed dial, no step in it, and the way we tell a step is we look for a ridge. Now if I bring in my 71 here and I tilt it sideways, you can see that there is a ridge around the top 2/3. There, we catch it. Now do you see the difficulty I'm having in showing you that step? Imagine if it's just a stationary photograph on an eBay listing where they haven't got the light to show the step. It can be quite hard. So try and ask for photographs from all angles if you want to really make sure, because these non-step dials can sometimes sort of throw a little shadow and make you believe that it's got a step. See there. Check the basics. The print, it's all intact. The loom plots are the short indices. They've got a nice covering of luminous material, and the whole dial is almost clean. I can't find any marks, scratches or blotches on it. Very important in this reference to be choosy on the dials, because you can afford to be choosy. In fact, this 78 dial, you can just see, has a splotch here, and that's why I changed it, because I changed the dial because I found a very nice dial, again on eBay. You don't find these things anymore. I mean, this is 10 years ago. And I changed it. So, next thing we look at is the bezel. Well, we've discussed the bezel. It's a dot next to 90 with tall tachometer letters. This one happens to be in extremely good condition. They're very, very hard to find if you're looking for a loose one. I paid $500 for this one about 4 or 5 years ago, and I would buy every single one I could see if I could. The next thing we look at is the case. Now, the cases in the 70s watches, it's hit or miss really, because some of them have been used really hard. This one you can see is still dirty. If I rub some of the dust off there, not dust, it's sort of grime. So this is going to really benefit from a service. We can see that there is residual brushing on the sides, that the lines on the case are, I wouldn't call them sharp, but they're defined. There is a slight scratch here. Wouldn't bother me. I think that scratch can be taken out without actually polishing the whole watch, and that would be nice if we can do that. Crown looks original. I mean, doesn't look original. Its original specification is almost certainly a service crown, almost certainly service pushers. When I service this watch, I shall endeavour to keep those original to the watch. With these later watches, the service parts are almost indistinguishable, so it's not something that I lose sleep over. Now, whenever you buy a watch, you have to identify it, and by identify it, you have to be sure what it is, because it's quite possible to buy a Speedmaster with a Lemania movement in it. And how do I know? Because I've done it. And we undo the back and lift off the case back, and inside here we have a polished case back, and it's marked 145.022-76. There's a watchmaker's mark there, and there's actually a felt tip watchmaker's there, which is very hard to see under the lighting. This is a smooth case back. Now, often they have pearlage, and this is what I'm talking about when I say pearlage, these circular polishing marks. And these circular polishing marks can be different sizes. I don't know why. I haven't really looked hard at that, but this doesn't have the pearlage. I've got another few case backs that also don't have pearlage of the 70s, but haven't seen enough of them to be certain of which one is which. Dust cover, very important. It holds the movement in place under pressure from the case pack. Some of the other Omega watches of the period, the 861s, they were held in by clamps onto the movement ring. They didn't have a dust cover. And the dust cover itself, we just have to make sure that it's a contemporary one, which this one is, because it has the small dot and a slightly smoother finish than the later service ones, which are sort of heavier. Inside, we've got an 861 movement. How do we know it's an 861 movement? Well, the sort of obvious thing is it's got a 861 marked under here. But for those of us who like to sort of go visual, look for the amoeba, the 861 amoeba, and that's this bridge here. In a 321, which is the other movement you're going to find in a Speedmaster of this era, and earlier in my era, shall we say, it's going to be a horseshoe-shaped bridge, and this is the amoeba-shaped bridge. Another thing to note with these mid to late 70s movements is the presence of a plastic part in the movement, which sort of instinctively sends shockwaves of horror through me. But here, it's the Delrin brake, Delrin being a proprietary plastic, self-lubricating, that Omega felt would last longer, make the movement more robust. And I have to say, from an engineering point of view, I think they're right. From an aesthetic point of view, it doesn't look great, and indeed you can see this one has sort of changed colour, the way that those 1980s computers, that beige goes in sort of a foul looking colour, and this one has deteriorated in that colour, but it doesn't make any difference to its performance. And Omega obviously felt the same way, because when they started making display backs for the 861, they reverted to a steel brake. But it's something you can check. It's also a quick and easy indication: has the movement been swapped if you've got the wrong brake in a watch you're inspecting. What do I look for in a movement? Well, common sense really. Is it clean? Are there any dust particles in it? Has the gasket broken down and gone into it? Is there any evidence of water damage? And we see that, or judge that, by the cleanliness of the movement, to check that all the copper coloured bridges are matching, that the silver or white coloured metal parts are clean and bright, which in this case they are, and we also check the screw heads. Look at each screw head, because that indicates how well the watchmaker dressed his screwdrivers and matched them to each screw, which in turn indicates the level of his work and dedication to the skill. In this case, the screw heads almost look untouched. If you get to this stage with a watch you've bought, just write down the serial number and do it with a loop. Make sure that you are not confusing any zeros for 8s or 9s or 6s. The stamps can be very difficult, and in fact quite a lot of the time in photographs even it can be confusing. So what I tend to do is take a high resolution photograph of the serial with the side lighting so that the shadows throw up, and then I do it again with the shadows from the other side, and I can't tell you the number of times I've corrected myself. Whilst we're here, we'll just have a quick look at the gasket. The gasket on this watch is pretty good. It shows no sign of decay or anything else. And the other thing is that sometimes Speedmasters can rot here on the lip. And this is often ignored by dealers or flippers. You know, for me, it's a big deal. If a watch has rot in it, it's not going to go away. It's not like a car where you can sort of treat it with Hammerite or something. It's going to continue. It's like a disease. It's going to keep going until it's eaten the watch in a million years, but it's still rot. So that's a good movement. Let's do it up. And with my fingers, I've just found the threads, and here is, I'll put a link how you can get these wonderful openers. You have to email my friend Paul in Scandinavia, and he will send you one. They're not cheap, but they are fantastic. I mean, just under $100, I think. And the final word to say on this watch is that it has tritium hands. Superluminova hands instead of the tritium hands. How do I know? Well, I can see from the photograph that it's got hands that are too bright, too white, and too luminous, as it were, even in this light. Again, let's bring back the 71, and we can see the 71, the central loom slots are decayed or black or dark, and this is quite common in tritium hands. These are obviously been replaced at service, and the question is, what do I do with those? I'm not going to leave them, I don't think, even though they don't seem that bad, but they're a little too bright for me. So we can do all sorts of things like replace the luminous material itself with tritium material, or we can replace the hands. That's something that I'll sort of let the universe decide, because I'll go into my stocks and see if I've got a nice set of hands that will suit the watch. Otherwise, we'll just, Simon Freese will, he's got a word, he'll adjust the hands. Great word. Anyway, so there is a little review of a 76. I hope you enjoyed that. Hope it helps you buy a better watch next time. And if there's anything you'd like me, any reference that you'd particularly like to see reviewed, I will do my best if you leave a comment down there. If I've been wrong about anything, do point it out. I'm always willing to learn. There are many, many people who know far more than me, and I'm always happy to hear from them and correct any mistakes I've made.